Welcome to the AACtion podcast, where we empower communication partners to feel confident with AAC. I am Lauren Greenleaf, a certified speech-language pathologist with nearly a decade of experience in AAC. Join us weekly as we dive into all of the aspects of AAC and hear from communication partners just like you who are successfully integrating AAC into their daily lives. Whether you are an SLP, a parent, an educator, or any other communication partner, you are absolutely in the right place if you are ready to take actionable steps towards AAC success today. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the AACtion podcast. I am Lauren, your host for this podcast, and this week I am here on a solo episode. I'm really excited to chat about this topic. We are going to be talking about AAC evaluations. So one of the questions I get probably the most often is, how do I do an AAC evaluation? How do I support others doing an AAC evaluation? Or how do I know what AAC system is best for my client, right? They kind of all fall under this umbrella of an AAC evaluation. And before we dive into any of the pieces of this, I want you to know that is a really loaded question. There are lots of bits and pieces and components into doing an AAC evaluation. So it's going to be very dependent, likely on your setting, your knowledge, and the resources that you have available. It is one of those situations that an AAC evaluation for me may look differently than an AAC evaluation for you who's listening. And there is no one right or wrong way to do an evaluation. I think the really key piece to doing an AAC evaluation is ensuring that you are matching the features of an AAC device to the client needs. You are not just saying, you know what, I know touch chat with word power, and I'm really good at touch chat with word power, so that's what I'm going to give my client. You need to make sure that we are looking at this through their lens. This is their support, not your support. So what features, what resources, what device do they need to be the most successful with their communication? And that is really, if you are using that as your end goal, all of the steps you take to get there are going to be a valid part of your eval process. So, like I said, there's no one right or wrong way to do that. I'm going to talk about some of the different features in a sense to some of the different things I have in an evaluation, or some of the different things I consider when I'm evaluating, and what they could look like in the grand scheme of it with your evaluations. So let's start by talking about that setting piece. So I have had the fortunate experience to do evaluations in multiple different settings. I've done them in private clinic. I've done them in a school system. I've done them as a contractor in a school system. I did them in graduate school where we saw the individual one time and they came in for a one-time evaluation. Those evals all look slightly different. There are bits and pieces that I'm going to do. I've also done virtual ones. I'll throw that in there too. So they're all going to look a little bit different, but generally speaking, they all have similarities. So let's talk about those one-time evals. So they come in for a session and we eval their AAC device and provide a recommendation. This is kind of how I operate my virtual ones a little bit, but it doesn't have to be how you operate. So to start, what I mean by one time, they are coming in for one session. It's maybe an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever is reasonable for you and your situation. And when they are in there, we are trialing 3 different devices. We are looking at 3 different things, and 3 is the number that's often used because insurances like to know that you considered 3 devices. The keyword is considered. If you don't have access, you can consider a device and give very clear explanation as to why that device was not the most appropriate. In my opinion, best practice is to genuinely try 3 different things, because sometimes we make these assumptions based on what we considered that are not always valid. So I try really hard to at least look at 3 different language systems in person with that individual. So when we are coming in for that one time, we're looking at those 3 and then we're providing that recommendation. When I am virtual, there's either somebody in the room that has knowledge on the device, or I'm very discreetly walking the parent through how to support certain things. Ideally, you have somebody else in the room who has an understanding of AAC so that they can help navigate through different things that may come up during the evaluation. When I do a one-time situation, I often like to follow up with the family after a certain period of time. So if you are going an insurance route, lots of insurances require 30 days trialing of an AAC device before that insurance will purchase that. So if you're looking at something like that, maybe a midway check-in is going to be really important. Maybe we're checking in to see if the language system is appropriate or if the device itself is appropriate. If the family is purchasing out of pocket, you can do a one-time evaluation and then they can go and purchase the app, and then you can either send them back to their speech therapist that they're currently working with, or you can pick them up as clients and support them in that component. So that's kind of what that one time looks like. It typically happens in private clinics more than it does in a school system. However, I have seen it done in that capacity in a school system too. So another option would be during therapy sessions. So this is the one I did frequently in the school system. I would have my AAC systems available during sessions, and we would be trialing different systems during sessions. And once we got to one that we felt was really appropriate for the kid, we started generalizing it across environments and putting it in the classroom and doing some more trialing there. You can do that from the start. There's no reason that you need to hold off and wait. I've just found that giving teaching teams a bunch of different things to trial can be really, really overwhelming at times. So that's been my experience. I also know people that in a school system will do like a 1-week trial of this system across the entire school setting, another week trial of another system across the entire school setting. And that's been really successful for them too. So like I mentioned, there's no one size fits all to how to do this support. When I do it during a session, I'm doing something similar. I'm providing multiple different language systems, multiple different devices, and seeing which one fits the individual the best. This is that whole feature matching discussion, which we will talk more about probably next year on the podcast because it's its own episode in and of itself. So once you get a decision made after that through your sessions, then you recommend a device or go through your school system to get it. Lots of different funding options, lots of different ways to do evaluations. Then next, we kind of have like a hybrid approach. So maybe you are seeing the kid or AAC user more than one time, but you are not necessarily the treating therapist. This is kind of how I do more of my contracts. So I will go in for an initial eval, make a recommendation, but then kind of the next week come back in and do some more work with it and see if that's fitting for the individual, while we're also simultaneously like doing a trial across the school setting. So that kind of bridges the two together. That speech therapist that's working with the individual is also working on it. So now we're just kind of getting more cooks in the kitchen to see what is the best support for them. So that was a bunch of different ways that we can organize an eval, like ways that it can be structured. And like I said, it's going to be dependent on your setting. What do you have available time-wise? What does your individual have available? Are they coming to you? Are you already working with them? Those things make a difference in how you navigate through that AAC evaluation. The next thing I want to talk about is knowledge. So your knowledge is going to impact how you do an AAC evaluation. And that is not in any way to say if you don't have years and years of experience, you can't do an AAC evaluation. Those of us that do have years and years of experience started somewhere, likely with little to no experience. My number one tip for you is if you are doing an AAC evaluation for the first time, second time, maybe even third time, find a mentor that you can talk through it with. Find somebody else in your area, online, in a network. The support network is a great place for that. Find someone that can help you through those steps because you're going to have questions and you want to make sure you're getting answers from different people or from someone that has experience doing it. You can also utilize like the Facebook groups for things like that. It's kind of my big recommendation. If you're brand new to this, start with some support. You're gonna need knowledge of devices and knowledge of features. You do not have to know every device on the market. It's really helpful if you do. It's something that I would strive to understand, like have a pretty deep understanding of many of the systems. But to do your first eval, you do not have to know every single device inside and out. What I want you to know is some of the basics in regards to access. Do I know what touch is? Do I know what scanning is? I want you to also have some basic understanding of the different layouts. Is it a category-based layout? Is it a motor planning-based layout? What are the benefits to category? What are the benefits to motor? Those are things you do need to have a general idea of, because you're going to make a recommendation and you want to make sure that that recommendation is a good recommendation for your individual. For those of you that are parents listening, you are able to purchase an app and an AAC or an iPad and an app independently by yourself, and no one is stopping you from doing that. Before you purchase the app, I do recommend you figure out the difference between some of the systems. This basic understanding of like the categories versus the motor planning is really good knowledge for you to have to pick the best system for your child. We want to make sure we're considering these different things so that they can have the best access to the device. So feature matching in general, there's lots of different things we can feature match. Basically, if it's on the system, it can be feature matched. So one of the things I recommend to those that are newer to the eval process and trying to learn a lot of the systems is to get exposure and experience with as many systems as you can. Those of you that are speech therapists, there are opportunities to get free licenses to these AAC apps specifically for evaluation purposes. So they are there and they are available, so you can access things like that and take time to learn them. I just provided this advice to someone today. As you're learning, write down the things that you find unique about that system, right? TD Snap has built-in behavior support. They have a built-in visual timer. They have a built-in first then. They have a built-in schedule. That's not something that really exists in the other apps. Touch Chat with Word Power has this like very predictive nature. When you press eat, it opens the eat page. When you press drink, it opens the drink page. That doesn't always look the same in other apps. Then there's Proloquo to Go, where we're really heavily relying on those folders. And when you open a folder, you stay in that folder and you explore the vocabulary in that folder, and then you can navigate around. Lamp is a very strict motor planning app. All of the words can be found within 3 hits. So these are just some of the highlights. There's many more. That's not a comprehensive list, but there are unique differences between each of these apps that are worth understanding and exploring, because those differences are what you're going to bring to the table when you do an eval and your individual is using an AAC device and you're like, you know what? But I actually think it would be really beneficial if they had the same motor plan every single time they tried to get to the word. Or I think it would be really beneficial if they could stay on a page and it not snap back to the home page. Or I think it'd be really beneficial if we could just get into the categories and say the animal names. So those are the type of things you're going to notice feature-wise with the language systems themselves. And those types of things are important to start to explore and navigate. Like I already mentioned, you do not have to have all of that knowledge day one. That's a big part of why I say find somebody who can help you with these evals. They don't have to physically be in person with you, but you can send them an email or call them and say, hey, this is what we tried today. This is what it looked like. I need some feedback. Should I try something different? Or is this a good thing to continue to try? Those supports are going to be really, really important. And if you don't have that person, try those other things. That's the whole point of trialing multiple devices, is trying them to see which one your AAC user is really interested in. Kind of wrapping up this knowledge piece, it's important to have knowledge of an AAC system, but just because you are not an expert in that AAC system, that language system itself, does not mean that you can't do an evaluation. What I have found is that people will start with what they're most familiar with, and I think that is totally fine. If you are most familiar with Proloquo to Go, and that is where you want to start with the individual you're working with, that is okay. What I want you to be considerate of is that may not be the best fit for them, and we may need to try other options. We should try other options. So you can start with what you're familiar with, but be very aware of what is working and what is not working, and whether or not another app may have that resource for you, or that support for you, or that feature for you. All right, so moving to this third part of resources. What resources do you have available to you? This makes a really big difference in what you're able to even try, right? If you only have access to one AAC system, one language system, it's going to be very hard to trial multiple options, right? So my biggest recommendation to you, if you are an SLP, to get access to the free apps that you can get access to. If you are a parent, there are lots of free trials. Most of the apps have some type of free trial, not all of them, but a lot of them. You can also look at different YouTube videos and see what is available that way to get a better understanding of the system if you can't get it hand in front of you. The other thing is to reach out to your device reps. Everyone has a device rep in their area, or who can meet you virtually, who can send you trial devices, who can come to your evaluation and show that device and help you navigate and learn it. There is an episode that aired just before this where we talked to somebody who was using their device rep, and their device rep was actually coming in for the majority of their evaluations as they were building that knowledge and that skill set. Ultimately, the speech therapist that is there has to write the report if we're looking at insurance funding, and typically many of the alternate funding options. But the rep is allowed to come in and show you these things. They are allowed to come in and help you navigate through an evaluation. They are an amazing resource and really well worth using. You can also look into your lending libraries. Each state has a lending library, and they often have AAC devices with multiple language systems or specific AAC devices, and you can rent those out for your trials. So those are some of the resources that I highly, highly, highly recommend you tap into so that you have what you need. Because the reality is, as a practitioner, as an SLP, you likely do not have the funds to purchase all of these devices and try all of these devices. School systems, you likely also don't have the funds to purchase all of these devices. One of the things I start with is an iPad with the apps of the different language systems. It's a really good intro. And then I will trial specific hardware from the devices or from the companies when we're ready to do that piece of the evaluation. As you grow, if you're a private practice owner, you can start to purchase more devices on your own. I can honestly tell you, as a private practice owner currently, I have several iPads with apps. And that's where I'm at right now, because the actual dedicated devices are incredibly expensive. And that is not worth my investment at this time, because I can get free trials to try with my individuals. So I have a couple trials out right now that I submitted for, and they sent them to me, and now we're trialing them, and they will go back typically after anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, sometimes even longer if you have a specific company that you're working with. It just depends on the company's policies, but that gives you an opportunity to really, really try the hardware and really try to see what you're looking at. So here we are, almost 20 minutes in, and that is a really, really brief overview of what an AAC eval can look like, what knowledge you may need to have to do it, and what resources you may need to have to do it. If you are submitting to insurance, you are required to submit a speech therapy report. It has to be from a speech therapist to go through the insurance process. If you are purchasing privately, you're purchasing it privately. So there is no requirement of, I have to turn this document into someone. If you are a parent who is really, really seeking an AAC device for your child, and you do not have the AAC resources available, you do not have an SLP that has knowledge in AAC, or you are on an insanely long wait list. I've seen that a lot. The wait lists around me are really, really high for an AAC evaluation. You can purchase a device, purchase a language system, and put it on an iPad for your child. I do recommend that you reach out to a speech therapist who does have knowledge, or to a family that has knowledge, so that you have a better understanding of what you're purchasing before you purchase. You can make most things work. I think that is a probably unpopular opinion that I'm going to share. It's not always about the app itself or the language system itself. It's really about that implementation piece. That being said, there are absolutely better apps for kids than others, and not universally better, just like I may do better with this system and you may do better with this system. So there's going to be unique personal things that go better. Those features are better for certain kids. So I feel that as a parent who wants to purchase, it's going to be really, really beneficial for you to have a good understanding of what those different features are, so that you can make the most educated decision for your child. Again, that's a hot take. I really believe in this capacity model of building up your skills. Whoever is listening, I really believe that building up your skills and understanding and knowing AAC is so much more important than me gatekeeping it and being the only one who ever does the AAC evaluations. I'm absolutely happy to walk families through it, to talk about those things. Those are services I offer in my practice. And I also have the network, the AAC support network. So if you're looking for those types of supports, they exist. We can help you with those things. But I want you guys to have the confidence that I have grown with my AAC evaluations, and you can grow too. I have no doubt that if you are listening, you can get to the point where you are really comfortable with an AAC evaluation. It's going to take time. We all started there. Any of us that you're like, oh, she can do an AAC eval, she's been doing it for 10 years. We all started with little to no experience, but we also started with mentors and the communities to help us and navigate through the questions that we had, so that we can continue to grow and get better. That being said too, I continue to grow my evaluation skills on a really regular basis. I don't do as many alternate access evals as I would like to. So I still am learning every time we do one of those evals, what's going to be the best. And I'm talking to my colleagues, and I'm reaching out to device reps and making sure that I'm getting all the right information I need to really best support this child. So with that, that's kind of my AAC eval chat for you guys today. I am really, really excited to announce that in early 2025, I'm not going to give you a specific date, but early 2025, I will be releasing an AAC evaluation handbook, workbook. It's more of a handbook, right? It's going to walk you through all of these different things that we talked about and more. It's going to give you guys a lot of information that you seem to all be seeking and asking me about. And it's really designed to be a very comprehensive support, in that I'm not going to say this is exactly how you need to do it. I'm going to give you multiple different ways to navigate through an AAC evaluation, and ways to utilize your skills and grow your skills so that you can better access and utilize AAC evaluations. So if you are interested in that, I am going to go ahead and put a wait list at the bottom in the show notes, so you can get your name on that wait list, so you will be the first to know when that date is announced and when that resource becomes available. So check that out in the show notes. And I will see you next week on the Take Action podcast.